Hello and welcome to my critical assessment of SMART teams. As I go through the assignment questions, I will just be taking some time to pause a few minutes to provide a response to each question for the assignment. So the first question was, from your awareness and experience, how significant are productivity problems and issues of friction versus flow in teams? For myself, I thought the author had a valid argument concerning the productivity points. Starting with information overload, you do not need to be in management or a corporate job to know that messages are being sent our way continuously. The book largely examines the impact of email, but we also have the influence of notifications from social media, text messages, and internet advertisements which are catered to our search history. This all comes through our phone, and to relax we often turn on the TV, which is yet another stream of information coming from a program that we are tuning into. I think one good strategy to remove the noise of the information overload is to fast media. I've done this before to give myself a break from social media and TV. Obviously, cutting off all the noise is difficult unless we would put away our phone and go on a wilderness retreat, but reducing noise is still achievable. I also identify with the author's point about distractions. Our phones are also big points of distraction, and all this extra information is what distracts us from focusing on what is important in our personal lives and in our jobs. Because of my roles in the workplace and they have been more entry level, too much time in unfocused meetings is one that I cannot resonate with as much. However, I do know what it feels like to attend a meeting which doesn't feel well prepared for by the leader. It's hard to be at a meeting which has no vision or purpose. Finally, I can understand unnecessary urgency. I even think about this course. I have lots of good excuses for why I've been hard-pressed to get my assignments done in this class, including this one. But the truth is that I also have had other distractions, and I have chosen to participate in other priorities, which sometimes are more necessity than others. I have chosen my balance of work, school, serving, and pleasure, and now I have to live with that choice. The urgency to get this assignment and others done is in short order real, and it causes a reactive approach and a greater chance of error. This I affirm to be true. Although I have a limited amount of experience with seeing friction played out in a team setting, I see how these areas of friction exist amongst teams. I think the author gives us a good perspective in the friction versus flow mindset. Friction results in a mindset and a culture of busyness and interruption, whereas flow will strive to focus more on the time towards productivity and to accomplish priorities within your vision. Alright, the second question, of what value is figure 1.2 and the disruptive to super productive elements? Figure 1.2 provides a good outline and summary of different productivity cultures. I believe the author gives us some valuable information in a cause and effect like outline. I will go through the 5 elements and share what I found was helpful to understand from the author. Number 1, in a disruptive productivity culture, often the leadership team is part of the problem. I think this is valuable to understand. So as leaders, we can make the effort to provide a productivity culture which has clarity in the vision of the team and support to help the team members work productively. I think the image also does a good job reminding leaders that if they struggle with disruptive productivity culture, they can start by raising awareness of the current struggle and being intentional by setting expectations to grow in productivity. Number 2, the next productivity culture listed is the passive culture, and although it is better than a disruptive culture, leadership teams are still ignoring the need to work on productivity. I liked the point that Crowley made in his portion that it's not that leaders tolerate poor productivity for the purpose of wanting poor performance. It is often because leaders do not actually know how to boost productivity. This could be because they have not stayed competent in their field and therefore are using outdated methods which do not have the same success as years ago. The image shows us that developing new skills is essential to move up to a productive culture. This means leadership needs to be willing to change and adapt to technology and other strategies. For number 3, now we are getting to a productive culture. Crowley shows that at this level, organizations actually begin developing and investing into productivity. Although the performance is enhanced, Crowley argues it is actually limited due to friction between the coworkers. The diagram shows us there is a need to champion protocols or productivity principles as a team to move to a collaborative culture. This means the team is unified in vision and how they will work together to become more productive. In number 4, in a collaborative productivity culture, leaders are now facilitating team productivity. The image shows it is a leveraged state of impact, which means work is beginning to flow without all the extra friction between staff. I think Crowley does a good job here, reminding us, similarly to the challenge in becoming productive, when we begin to facilitate the team productivity, we need to be careful that we don't slip back into our bad habits. In order for this to happen, we need others to champion the idea or believe in the vision. If this commitment does not take place over a prolonged period of time by the core people, continued inspiration will not endure within the culture. And now to number 5. The highest rank of productivity culture is super productive. This is a sustained culture, and like I mentioned in the collaborative section, people need to commit. And when you have a super productive culture, it's because people have bought in and are working to be more productive and helping others be productive. It needs to become a core value, and this means even new people joining the team get trained in a way that they understand that is important to the organization. Right, third question. Explain the working relationships amongst the 4 qualities of a smart team and how they are able to change team behaviors. In Chapter 3, Crowley looks more in depth at the qualities of a smart team to produce powerful outcomes. These outcomes include focus, respect, trust, and impact. We see in a Venn diagram-like figure the 4 qualities overlap to give us the outcomes. Number 1, which is focus. When we combine the qualities of being purposeful and mindful, this results in focus. This is true since we are purposeful, we work with purpose and have more of an impact in our role. This encourages us to stay focused on the purpose or mission so we do not get distracted with things that hold no value. Meanwhile, when we are mindful, we are becoming aware of the distractions which can disrupt our productivity and those around us. We can use this to our advantage to maintain focus and eliminate friction. Number 2 is respect. When we combine the qualities of being mindful and punctual, the outcome is respect. This means that we are mindful or aware of what is happening around us and understanding the needs of those who we work alongside. The author does a great job highlighting that when we are mindful, we will be considerate enough to think about how our behaviors affect other people's responsibilities and their schedules. Being aware of these behaviors can help us minimize friction between ourselves and colleagues and is a sign of respect. Crowley says that to be punctual is non-negotiable, and I totally agree with him. Basic respect of time will result in team members showing up on time for meetings and delivering tasks at an assigned deadline. When we are mindful, we will also be punctual. Number 3 was trust. When we combined the qualities of being punctual and reliable, the outcome is trust. These qualities are necessary in every relationship, whether it is with our team members or with our clients. Punctuality and reliability are both qualities which exhibit responsibility. With punctuality, we have a responsibility of stewarding our time and the time of others. Trust is built when we show up on time and are prepared for meetings. Similarly, to the responsibility of being punctual, as a team player, we are accountable for the quality of our work, meeting deadlines, and keeping our word. And finally, number 4 is impact. When we combine the qualities of being purposeful and reliable, we make an impact. As already mentioned, reliability is an action of taking responsibility in order to excel at a high performance. Meanwhile, being purposeful is the mindset which drives action and motivates us to persevere in making a continued impact rather than simply finishing a temporary checklist. We can make a difference because of our commitment to our role, but we also must understand our purpose and desire to make an impact with our work. When we desire to make a difference, we care more about the quality of our work. This results in higher performance. These qualities can change team behavior because the outcomes are transformational. However, the only way that true positive change will take place is if teams are unified in the mission of purposefulness, mindfulness, punctuality, and reliability, and the vision and values of focus, respect, trust, and impact. The next question just asks to personalize the importance of productivity principles in your concepts of what a team is all about. I have never used productivity principles, and I do not work in a context where the concept of productivity principles are desperately needed. Crowley does show us that every team is different, so each team will have a different set of productivity principles. For our team, maybe under mindfulness, we could list different expected ways to communicate with our coworkers and how we are to communicate with the boss about different issues. Under purposefulness, we may have principles which speak to our values concerning our customer relationships and how to achieve our services that we provide to the community. Under reliability, we could have something about how the expected opening and closing duties of our job are done, or other daily tasks that are expected to be done on time. These are just a few of my personal thoughts about a topic which I don't have a whole lot of experience with. Next question is, what do you think of the communication tools presented in Figure 4.1? Comment on how well or poorly you have seen them in actual practice in teams. I think there is a time and a place for all the communication tools. I honestly have never thought of them being as communication tools, but rather more just common practice of communication in our culture. So the first one was conversations. I think conversations are still the best. Having a face-to-face discussion lets you see emotion and body language, and it requires you to listen also. I believe this is important, especially in conflict. Unfortunately, more and more people are shying away from in-person communication, and as a result, we are seeing people put into leadership who are uncomfortable with in-person conversations. I have also noticed an increase of young people who are uncomfortable and anxious to answer the telephone. I believe it is important to keep conversation a regular form of communication and for matters of high importance. Next, we have meetings. I still believe that meetings are important, and I think Crowley did a great job showing the dangers of mismanaged meetings. Therefore, I would agree that we shouldn't use meetings as the primary communication. However, they should be used occasionally to bring teams together for the purpose of making decisions, planning strategies, and team-building efforts. Overall, I have seen people manage this pretty good in my employment experience. Now for email. I love using email, and I've used it to communicate with my team of umpires, which I supervise each summer. I send out schedules, tournament information, rules, requests, and opportunities for growth. This is all coming to my personal email, which is getting so many garbage emails each week that it is out of control. I can understand the need for email when you have content to share and when you need to reach a group of people which are in another location. My experience with working in a workplace with an email account has been an on-again, off-again experience. My job in radio was probably the most active, where I had an email account. And this was primarily because of emailing audio content to others, which I was collaborating with. However, I have experienced being carbon copied on irrelevant emails before, And in this area, I think Crowley makes a good point of being mindful of who we are including in our emails. And finally, Post is the last form of communication tool. This would be the communication tool that I've had the least amount of experience with within a workplace. I've never been in a workplace that has had a post forum. The closest thing I've experienced to this is like a Teams or a WhatsApp chat thread. Crowley says post tool on tools like Slack bring or pull. It's a pull of technology approach where you're drawing the relevant crowd to the post, and that differs from email, which you're pushing the message and the content out to the chosen people. So that's kind of interesting. The next question is share highlights that stand out for you from Crowley's Congregate chapter. Also comment on the potential effectiveness of his 5 W's model, which was figure 5.2, for planning a meeting. And sprinkle in some anecdotes of what you personally see and experience regarding effective and ineffective meetings. So I don't have a lot of personal experience with this either, so I won't be sharing too many personal experience, but I'll do my best here. The biggest standout for me in this chapter is the development of a dysfunctional meeting culture in business leadership. Crowley demonstrates this by showing us how we spend too much time in meetings. This brings an imbalance between our work responsibilities and priorities, and results in having to work extra hours and having to manage increased stress and frustration. Something else which was very interesting in this chapter was Crowley's argument to aim for 100% fewer meetings. This is a fairly provocative statement. No meetings? How come? But I thought he did a great job breaking it down into the 25% fewer meetings, shorter meetings, fewer participants, and time wasted. When we look at the possibility of having fewer meetings, I agree we need to have balance in our schedule. Our schedule should not be a free-for-all for others to take our time. I also like the point that we should not attend a meeting if it has no purpose or value. I think of the question, are we getting together to hang out as buddies or to get a job done? I even must think about this to an extent when I get together with my best friend, who is also my co-leader for Life Group. A key point that stood out to me on having shorter meetings is that it naturally results in more productivity, since there is a smaller window to focus on the key message. The fourth point was also interesting, arguing for less participants. I thought Crowley made some really good points here about not needing spectators who won't really participate in the meeting. Every participant should have a purpose for being there, and it is beneficial for the individual and the team if they know the purpose from when the meeting begins. The final 25% was under less wasted time. This one probably stood out to me the least, since it overlapped with the other points. However, I fully agree that meeting planning and purpose increases productivity, and less time in meetings. That just means that everybody that's going to be attending the meeting saves time if the meetings are shorter. I will now move on to Crowley's 5W model, and just, is this an effective approach? I believe it definitely has the potential to be effective, and here's why. Crowley starts off with setting the why. This means you are setting the purpose in advance. Before you give your opening with the meeting, it is common to go into the meeting blind or with a very vague sense of its intended purpose. By telling participants why you must attend, when and how long it will take place, you are already communicating with an intention. This will pave the way for productivity in the meeting. I do not deal with business meetings. However, I think that there are some good principles that I can use when meeting with my Life Group co-leader to keep us focused on our purpose as leaders. Next, you're communicating the what. This is important because it sets a foundation for what the meeting is built on. I find that this conversation can easily be held in advance at the same time as understanding the purpose. However, there may be a barrier in between, as the specifics of the content presented will need to be developed strategically. For myself in Life Group, this has often looked like taking a topic and building a potential discussion outline for the gathering. It is not hard and steadfast as our first and foremost priority will still be to shepherd the flock, but it gives us a guideline to focus on throughout the evening. As I already mentioned, the who of the meeting planning is also important because you need to invite people with purpose. This is what the 5W model encourages, inviting the right people and the right number of people. This can be effective because people are motivated to prepare if they know they are there for a purpose. In my personal experience, I have never been told in advance my purpose for attending a meeting. Now we get to the fourth W, which is where. Where is important in having an effective meeting because leaders must be sensitive and mindful of what type of environment productivity for the team will bring more productivity for the team that they are meeting with. It needs the potential to accommodate the team in multiple areas, including space and various resources. Being mindful of the meeting dynamic of being on-site or off-site is also important. My limited experience with meetings makes me think of just meeting with a pastor in this example. I can either meet with him in his office or I can go out for coffee with him in public. There are certain conversations which are more appropriate to happen publicly in a more casual setting, but some are more meant for privacy. The final W is when. I liked Crowley's point that meetings work well with when the participants have influence on the date. This is obviously a good thing because if they have a say on when they would like to meet, that is a greater chance that more people are going to attend. Scheduling in advance will obviously be more impactful than last-minute meetings, and being prepared to give a certain amount of attention to each topic will also avoid distraction and meeting speakers from taking too long of a rabbit trail. Our next question is, to what extent do you think figure 6.1 is adequate to summarize the essential elements of collaboration? The figure itself, I think, is a little vague to fulfill the purpose of summarizing these three elements of collaboration well. However, the description included with all the three elements in the book does a great job explaining each principle. So let's go over the three elements. Number one was alignment. Get everyone on the same page. This is a necessary principle in collaboration. Unity is something I continue to realize the importance of in the church and in other groups. Being a sports fan, I like how the book gave an example of a sports team. The coach will set the vision for the team to help accomplish the goal. Right now we have the Four Nations face-off, which is wrapping up, and Canada, United States, Finland, and Sweden are competing for a trophy and the bragging rights for being the best country at hockey. This is a great example where the coach will lead the way of execution, to develop a strategy and a system to bring unity amongst the team as they work together on the ice. I personally never had a hockey coach which emphasized these values strongly. Alignment means having the same priorities as others around you and a common understanding of how to achieve it, and this is where we begin to have the second element, which is agreement. So agreement is the setting the rules of engagement. I've often used agreement and alignment interchangeably, but Crowley differentiates between the two by showing agreement explains how we will work together and collaborate. I like how he shows the agreement on method of communication, how to conduct meetings, raise issues or concerns, and progress updates are also important for successful collaboration. I also like how Crowley brings in the value of reliability as a key factor in agreement. Since agreement is doing what you say you will, this means we live our lives with integrity and respect. That requires mindfulness and brings us to our third element, awareness. Awareness is monitoring and managing behaviors. The final element in Figure 6.1 is awareness. This encourages mindfulness as we monitor and manage our behaviors, like I said. And building awareness takes time and effort, but can be done if we approach each day's interactions in a mindful way. This can be done corporately by meeting with relevant people regularly to discuss project progress and analyze productivity friction. This happens through avenues such as meetings and emails, or individually in our lives as we analyze our own distractions which can set us off course. Crowley also talks about meditation in his book, and this reveals an important principle of having an aim or end goal that we are setting our mind on. Finally, I believe remembering that these elements of collaboration are primarily important because the Bible supports and encourages them, and taking time to learn from Scripture to apply these values to our lives helps us work well with others. The next question is, what relevance and potential impact do the 4 key skills for effective collaboration have as presented in Chapter 7? When mentioning the 4 key skills for effective cooperation, we are referring to managing urgency, developing an active mindset, negotiating our workloads, and delegating the right way. Let's look at how each one has relevance and potential impact. Managing urgency. This is a relevant skill because everyone has urgency in their life. We all have expectations, pressures, and deadlines that we face. It is important to manage because some urgency is unreasonable and other urgency can be negotiated. When we are proactive and prepare in advance, we are reducing urgency for both ourselves and others who we may delegate tasks to. Learning to ignore unreasonable urgency, negotiate reasonable urgency, and question unreasonable urgency is a skill. When we start practicing these skills, our cooperation as a team improves because there will be less anxiety for each person and increased productivity on tasks of priority. The second skill is developing an active mindset. This is relevant because in every workplace situation, you have a decision how to respond. This skill is impactful because it requires thoughtfulness of priorities and being willing to count the cost. When we are proactive, we anticipate and are prepared for possible upcoming needs. When we become more reactive, we have a higher stress level, greater anxiety, and less satisfaction in doing our jobs. These all result in lower impact. The third skill is negotiating our workloads. This is relevant because we are overloaded with so many tasks and responsibilities. We need to learn to manage our work and negotiate our deadlines. When we do not negotiate, we are swamped with too much work and our quality of each task suffers. In order for negotiation to be impactful, we should do so with an effective communication. This means we must be respectful and polite when negotiating, with a reasonable alternative in view. I appreciate the SSH proactive approach in the chapter where you acknowledge the request, set an expectation of when you can deliver, schedule a new time for completion, and hold yourself accountable to the agreement. This approach is impactful and can be sustained because managers will begin to trust their staff more who are trying to stay true to their commitments in these negotiated agreements. The final skill for effective cooperation is delegating the right way. This skill is obviously relevant because in order to work in cooperation with someone, there needs to be leadership sharing responsibilities with staff through delegation. This skill becomes impactful because you are choosing the right people to get the jobs done. You're communicating expectations clearly, resulting in success, and you're open to listening to your team to negotiate the expectations in the delegation process. Crowley encourages that a highly impactful delegation will be trusted to the team, where they will be able to plan and manage it themselves. This should be our vision. If managers fail to delegate with impact, they risk not passing on their expertise to next generation of leaders. I see this in umpiring baseball all the time. You'll see senior umpires give themselves games instead of giving upcoming guys opportunities to learn and grow. They fail to pass on the knowledge they have accumulated through their experience. And finally, summarize your overall takeaway from SMART teams that you want to take into your future leadership activity. For me, the takeaway is the four qualities of a smart team: respect, trust, focus, and impact, where some of the most important principles that were talked about in the entire book. Managing an email account or planning a meeting is great, but there is nothing more important than how you are developing your relationships and doing it with godly character, which promotes purpose, unity, respect, grace, and humility. I will always stand on these things as my foundation over any other productivity strategy to achieve results. I thank you for listening.